I was 18 and worked at a bookstore with a cafe in Maple Grove, USA, a few blocks from home, going there after classes. It was a cozy place, known for its calm atmosphere and the scent of books mixed with fresh coffee. Our team was all women, most of us still in high school or in college. The peculiarity of our space was a huge glass wall facing the parking lot, providing a broad view for those arriving or passing by. After joining the team, I quickly adapted to the routine, working 4 to 6 shifts every week. During this time, most days passed without incident, except for the occasional demanding customer. But something strange began to happen about 5 months after I started. Almost every night, a specific vehicle parked directly in front of our large glass window. It was an old, dark-colored car that stayed there with its headlights on for about an hour and a half, then simply left. The driver never entered the bookstore. At first, we didn't pay much attention, thinking it might just be someone looking for a quiet place to spend time during a work break or something. However, the persistence of this nighttime presence began to bother us, especially because of the intense light from the headlights invading the space, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere for us and for the customers who came to enjoy the tranquility of our space to read or study. We talked among ourselves, trying to guess who it could be and what could be the reason for choosing that exact spot to park every night. But no matter how much we speculated, we didn't come to any logical conclusion. The strange thing was that, even with this established routine, the mysterious nighttime visitor never showed any sign of wanting to get closer than the parking lot's limit, always keeping a distance, observing from outside. This behavior began to create a certain discomfort among the team. The constant and silent presence of the car, combined with its strategic location in front of the window, made us feel as if we were being watched. The situation became a recurring topic in our conversations, with some of us expressing concern about safety, especially on closing days, when the night had already fallen and street activity decreased. Despite the discomfort and speculations, we continued with our routine, trying our best to ignore the presence of that car and its mysterious occupant. We couldn't imagine that this already quite disturbing situation was about to take an even more unexpected and alarming turn. Until one seemingly ordinary night, we witnessed his car parking once again. With a collective sigh of frustration, we waited for the next chapter of that disturbing routine, until we heard the distinctive sound of the car door opening and closing. A tense silence filled the air as all of us, uncertain of what to expect, watched his approach. The surprise came when he finally entered, a middle-aged man with an appearance as ordinary as it was friendly. With calm behavior, he placed his order, exchanged some kind words, and then left shortly after. This brief encounter made us question our previous suspicions. Perhaps we had misjudged his intentions. However, this doubt soon dissipated when he resumed his unsettling habit of lurking parked, with headlights invading our workspace. My manager, who rarely witnessed these nighttime episodes, finally saw one of them. Confronted with the reality of the situation, she didn't hesitate to call the police, hoping to put an end to that disturbance. The arrival of the police at his vehicle revealed a repulsive scene. There he was, engaging in obscene acts while watching us. The revelation left us horrified and deeply violated in our privacy and security. In the months following the incident, it was believed that police intervention had resolved the issue, as his visit ceased. This relief lasted until I faced a change of state and the difficult decision to part with my iguana. After announcing the pet's adoption, I quickly received a response and, unsuspecting, provided my address. On the appointed day, my father welcomed the interested party, leading him to my room where the iguana awaited. My heart froze when I came face to face with the familiar figure of the man who had terrorized our nights at the bookstore. Paralyzed by surprise and fear, I could hardly maintain a coherent conversation about the iguana before making up an excuse to end the encounter. Of course, I would never hand over my pet to him, but the revelation that this individual now knew where I lived filled me with renewed fear. Reflecting on these events, I am more convinced than ever that his presence was no coincidence, and his interest in the iguana, nothing more than a facade to intimidate me. I could never have imagined that my peaceful and routine existence would turn into a real nightmare in such a short time. It all started innocently enough, with an anonymous follower on social media. At first, it was just likes here and there, generic comments on some of my photos. Things any person sharing their life online could expect. There were no alarm bells, nothing that made me stop to think. After all, we live in the age of digital connection, where such interactions are more than normal. But then things began to change, gradually at first, almost imperceptibly. Those casual interactions started to become more frequent, more focused. This follower, one among many blending into the virtual crowd of my profile, began to stand out. Not for anything positive, but for an interest that at first seemed harmless. Private messages began to appear in my inbox, initially laden with praise, with admiration that, I confess, flattered me. Who doesn't like to be praised? I thought. However, as the weeks passed, the nature of these messages began to change, taking on a tone that made me increasingly uncomfortable. They were no longer just compliments or light attempts to start a conversation. There was something more there, a growing obsession that began to show through the carefully chosen words of this stranger. He mentioned specific details about my life, details I had never disclosed on my social media or anywhere else online. He knew the name of the cafe where I liked to spend Saturday mornings, the parks where I jogged, even the bars where I met my friends after work. How did he know these things? I began to wonder. I racked my brain, trying to find some clue, some moment of carelessness that might have revealed this information. But nothing made sense. I had always been careful about what I shared online, keeping my private life just that, private. The feeling of being watched began to set in, a shadow following me no matter where I went. With each new message, with each detail revealed about my life, the shadow grew, becoming a constant and threatening presence. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, scanning the crowd for a face that could belong to this anonymous follower. But what scared me the most was the uncertainty, not knowing who this person was or what they could want from me. The concern that dominated me at that time was as if the guy who was following me was always nearby. When I blocked him on social media, for a moment I thought I had solved the problem, that I had removed him from my life. But in reality, it didn't help at all. Shortly after, the call started, as if he wanted to show that blocking me hadn't made any difference. The phone rang all the time, day and night, and I lost what little sleep I could get. At first, I even answered, trying to seem brave, and asked who was on the other end. But all I heard was silence or, sometimes, someone breathing heavily, as if enjoying seeing me scared. I started to feel like I was really being followed, and that kept me on edge all the time. I felt as if someone was always watching me, following my every move, and that was a horrible feeling. Leaving home to go to work became a struggle, every shadow on the street seemed like a threat. Going to the police was what I thought of doing next, trying to find a way to protect myself from this invisible stalking. But dealing with a stalker you can't see or identify is complicated. The police couldn't do much without concrete evidence, without knowing who was behind it. My stress was through the roof. My normal life, with my routine and the places I liked, all changed because I had to always keep an eye out. I changed my routes, stopped going to my favorite places, and felt like a stranger walking the streets that used to be peaceful to me. This loneliness, this whole change, only my friends and family saw, wanting to help but not knowing how. It was a very difficult time, and I felt trapped in this situation, with no way out. In that small town of Cedar Falls, in the northern United States, I was just beginning my adult journey. At 20, full of dreams and expectations, I landed a receptionist job at one of the city's most charming places, a boutique hotel filled with history and beauty. The hotel, with its Victorian facade and elegantly decorated interior, was a gathering spot for tourists and locals seeking a taste of the city's unique atmosphere. The first few weeks were like a dream. Each day was a new adventure. I felt part of something special, immersing myself in the stories and local culture while serving guests. Interacting with people from all corners of the world and locals with their fascinating tales about Cedar Falls enriched my days. I saw myself not only working but also growing and learning in an environment that valued history and community. However, after about a month in this almost idyllic routine, a presence began to stand out. At first, he was just another face among many, a man I imagined to be another tourist drawn to the hotel's charm. But his frequency and behavior soon began to set him apart from the rest. He didn't seem interested in the hotel's services, he made no reservations, consumed nothing from the bar or restaurant. Instead, he always chose the same couch in the lobby, where he spent hours on end. Sometimes, he brought a newspaper, other times, he simply sat there, lost in thought, always observing the comings and goings of the place. Initially, I didn't pay much attention to his presence. Cedar Falls was a welcoming town, and the hotel, with its inviting atmosphere, was open to all. However, as the days went by, his consistency began to intrigue me. He showed up like clockwork, always at the same times, especially during my shifts. His interest seemed more in observing than in anything else the hotel offered. His demeanor was calm and reserved. He never tried to draw attention or interact directly with me or other guests. Despite this, I began to feel a kind of weight, a sense of being watched a little more closely than was comfortable. This feeling intensified when our eyes met. There was something in his gaze that I couldn't decipher, something that caused me increasing discomfort. Comments among coworkers began to arise, speculations about who he could be and what he wanted. Some thought he was just a lonely person seeking companionship in the hotel's hustle and bustle, while others suggested that maybe he had some particular interest in the place or someone who worked there. I tried to maintain an air of professionalism, focusing on my work and avoiding paying too much attention to that mystery. But deep down, a restlessness began to take hold of me, a premonition that perhaps the situation wasn't as innocent as it seemed. At first, I tried to convince myself that he was just another admirer of the hotel's unique ambience. But as his presence became a constant, I couldn't help but feel a growing discomfort. He didn't limit himself to simple observations. He began to seek interactions, asking personal questions whenever he had the chance. Questions about my life, my interests, and even my work schedule became frequent. I tried to keep the answers vague, steering the conversation toward neutral topics, but he persisted, demonstrating a curiosity that exceeded the bounds of casual. Over time, his presence became more oppressive. He not only showed up during my shifts but also watched me from an uncomfortably close distance, his visits extending to moments when I left the hotel. On some occasions, I noticed him following me down adjacent streets, always keeping a distance that, while not physically invasive, was enough to make me feel watched. This perception of being constantly monitored, both at work and during my travels, heightened my anxiety to levels I had never experienced before. Bringing these concerns to the manager, I hoped to find some solution or at least some support in dealing with the situation. The manager, understanding the gravity of the situation, promptly took action, addressing the man directly to discuss his disturbing behavior. For a while, it seemed that his actions had had an effect, and the stalker's absence allowed me to breathe a sigh of relief, believing the situation was resolved. However, this sense of security was abruptly interrupted when, after a day of work, I found that threatening note. The handwritten words not only confirmed that he knew intimate details about my life but also expressed a clear intention to continue his pursuit. The shock and fear I felt at that moment are difficult to describe. It was evident that the situation had escalated to a level of real danger, and the need for action became urgent. Reporting the incident to the police was a step I hesitated to take initially, concerned about the possibility of overreacting. However, the seriousness of the note left no room for doubt. The police treated the case with the attention it deserved, initiating a detailed investigation based on the information I could provide. The discovery that the man was a known stalker in the community, with a history of similar behaviors, was a shock but also a relief, as it validated my concerns. Police intervention and the subsequent restraining order were decisive in restoring my peace of mind. The experience, though terrifying, served as a reminder of the importance of being aware of my surroundings and not underestimating my intuition. Cedar Falls, with its tranquil and welcoming appearance, revealed a darker side that I never imagined encountering. This lesson in vigilance and the ability to trust the community and authorities for protection are teachings I will carry with me, aware that security is a precious commodity, often forged in adversity. I lived an apparently normal life, just one among many young people trying to balance work and studies, without imagining that my tranquility was about to be irreversibly shaken. It all started on an autumn night, when I first noticed someone was following me as I returned home. At first, I thought it was just my paranoia. After all, Willow Creek is known for being a quiet community where everyone knows each other. But as the days went by, this feeling of being watched not only persisted but intensified. I vividly remembered the first time I felt those eyes on me. It was a cool autumn night, and fallen leaves formed a crunchy carpet under my feet. The full moon illuminated the path, casting elongated shadows that intertwined with the darkness. With each step I took, an echo seemed to follow my rhythm, but whenever I looked back, I found only the empty street. I tried to convince myself that it was just the sound of my own steps, an illusion created by the stillness of the night. However, the feeling of being followed accompanied me until I reached home, locking the door behind me with a sigh of relief and at the same time heavy with concern. One night, while checking my email, I found a message from an unknown sender. The message was short, saying only, "I see you." At that moment, a wave of fear washed over me. Who could be sending me this? And why? Unanswered questions began to torment me. In the days that followed, more emails arrived, each one more disturbing than the last. Photos of me, taken without my knowledge, in various places I frequented, at university, at the cafe where I worked part-time, even near my home. The person doing this knew my routine better than anyone. I didn't know who to turn to. The Willow Creek police, although well-intentioned, seemed not to take my case as seriously as I had hoped. They advised me to change my routines and to be more cautious, but how could I be cautious against someone whose presence was invisible, but whose threat was so tangible? The situation escalated when I began receiving late-night calls. Whenever I answered, the silence on the other end was replaced by heavy breathing, followed by the same whispered phrase, "I see you." Terror took hold of me, affecting my sleep, my performance at work and university. I felt like prey being constantly watched by the predator, never knowing when he would decide to attack. I decided, then, to take more drastic measures. I changed my phone number, installed security cameras around my house, and avoided keeping a fixed routine as much as possible. For a brief period, these measures seemed to work. The messages and calls ceased, and I began to believe that maybe the nightmare was over. However, this sense of security was shattered one night when, returning home, I found a note attached to the front door. "You can't hide from me," read the handwritten message. At that moment, I knew that changing my habits or increasing my security would not be enough. I was dealing with someone determined, someone who wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted, whatever it was. Fear became my constant companion, profoundly altering the way I lived. Willow Creek, the town I once called home, now seemed like a dark maze, where every corner could hide my pursuer. The uncertainty about this person's identity and what they might be capable of haunted me day and night. In the midst of the terror of being constantly pursued, I decided that my only option was to confront the situation. I began to investigate on my own, trying to find any clue that could lead to the identity of my stalker. Every step I took in this direction, however, seemed only to deepen the mystery, as if I were sinking further and further into an unsolvable puzzle. As I finish writing this, I still glance back from time to time, hoping to see when the one who pursues me will appear. Not knowing when that will happen is perhaps the most frightening part of all this. On a beautiful spring afternoon, I was in the park of my city, Oak Ridge, drawing nature for a project of mine. I saw a man looking at me from afar. He was tall, wore dark clothes, and had a stubble beard, but I didn't pay much attention. After all, the park is a place where everyone can go to enjoy the view. But later on, I began to see this man in various places. He was at the cafe where I always had coffee, on the streets I passed going to work, and even near the place where I worked. He never came close or spoke to me, just kept watching from a distance, which made me very worried. So, I decided to change my routes and schedules to try to avoid him. I changed the time I went to the cafe, started taking different streets to work, and even changed the days I went to the park. But somehow, he always managed to find me. The more he followed me, the more I felt like he was always watching me, even when I couldn't see him. All of this made me very afraid. I tried to do everything differently for him to stop following me, but it didn't work. It was as if he knew all my steps, which made me realize that he was really after me. I felt watched all the time, and this completely changed my life in Oak Ridge. This constant fear showed me that I needed help, that I couldn't deal with this alone. It was time to do something more serious to protect myself. The turning point came one night, when I was returning from work later than usual. The sun had already set, and the streets of Oak Ridge were strangely quiet. That's when I heard footsteps following mine. Every time I sped up, the footsteps sped up too. I turned abruptly to confront whoever was behind me, and there he was, the man who had been following me. His expression was unreadable, but there was an intensity in his eyes that chilled my blood. I ran like I had never run before, without looking back, until I got home, locking all the doors and windows. That night, I barely slept, tormented by fear and uncertainty about what that stranger wanted from me. The next day, with the daylight bringing a temporary sense of security, I contacted the police. I explained the situation, described the man, and mentioned all the places where he had appeared. The Oak Ridge police took my report seriously, initiating an investigation to identify and locate the stalker. Meanwhile, I took measures to protect myself, installing security cameras in my house and asking friends to accompany me whenever possible. The following days were tense. Every shadow and distant figure made me startle, but I knew I needed to keep living my life, despite the fear. After some distressing weeks, the police finally managed to identify the man. He was a resident of another city, who had developed an obsession with me after seeing me in the park on that spring day. With the intervention of the authorities, he was prohibited from approaching me or Oak Ridge, under penalty of facing serious legal actions. Hello everyone, I sincerely hope you found today's video enjoyable and engaging. If you enjoyed the content and are looking forward to discovering more similar material, please remember to subscribe to our channel and click the like button on this video. Your support plays a significant role in our ability to continue producing content and means a lot to us. I'm also looking forward to hearing your feedback on the video, so please don't hesitate to leave your comments in the section below. Your input is crucial in helping us tailor our content to what you most enjoy watching. Until we meet again, please take care and stay safe. And always remember, it's a joy and an absolute privilege to share these moments with you.